Well, George, thanks for joining the Vector Accelerator Podcast. I thought we could start, if you're willing, tell us a little bit about your background, and if we can just go after it. Can you think of a transition fail, something that you've just recognized through your transition was a big, huge whoopsie?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Got a lot of Vector Accelerator, so glad to give back. So a little bit about myself. Did 23 years in the Navy as a corpsman. Spent some time on ship with the Marines, on land. My last duty station was as an instructor. Shortly after that, I took a role in government service. I stood up and managed the healthcare simulation program, training independent duty corpsmen, so allied health professionals, PAs, docs, nurses.
Huh.
So that was fun. It was fun because I got to create something. So that was one of the things that I just loved about it. I got to make it my own. Decided to leave government service. I needed something different. I needed a challenge. I won't say I was bored, but I needed to do something else. I don't think I've really found my purpose, and I'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So I needed to figure that out.
Yeah.
Probably my single biggest failure, although I got a job right out of the military, so to a certain extent, probably people thought, "Hey, that's not a failure. You're working right away."
Right.
But my single biggest failure was not networking enough and not really figuring myself out. That self-reflection.
Yeah.
What do I want to do? What is George going to be after the military? I think one of those things, especially for senior veterans that do 20 plus years, is you're so tied to what you did before in the past. And it's difficult to look back right near the end or right shortly after you retire and realize, man, I did so much in the military. I didn't just do what my main job was.
Yeah.
Because we have these things called collateral duties, and it really are side gigs within your main job.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, a lot of times they encompass a lot more than your main job.
Huh.
And it's helpful for you to take those roles on for a lot of reasons, for promotion potential. I mean, you name it. It puts your name out there and sets you apart from the competition.
Yeah.
And you don't think about those things until you have time to reflect. And I don't think I had that time to reflect or even thought about that self-reflection.
Yeah.
So I think that was my biggest fail. I took that government job because, one, I was enticed by it because it was something new, something for me to build. The people that hired me, I worked for them in the military, and they told me, hey, we don't know what this is all about. You're going to have to figure it out and build it. So we won't even know if you're doing it right or wrong, which was
perfect.
But they also understood, hey, we've had you run programs before, start new programs, so we know what you're about. We know you're going to be fine. So I took it on as a challenge. I'm like, man, I'm looking for something like that. I'm looking for something where I can dig in and make it my own. So I said, perfect opportunity. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the heck out of it. For about 3 or 4 years, I was running by myself until I had the funding for staffing. And I grew it out of a closet to an entire wing of the building. And I had a blast.
Yeah.
But then it was Groundhog Day. Even though I was bringing in new equipment, bringing new technologies in, and having to teach instructors and students and things and everyone else on a regular basis, it just felt, man, this is just rote memorization to a certain extent. Everything was in my brain.
Right.
And I needed to do something that was just a little more exciting than that. I think I needed that for myself. I wasn't ready to just sit back, relax, and coast. And a lot of people were asking me, hey, how can you leave this? It's such a cushy job. I said, it's killing me, I think, inside slowly. So no
killing
regrets.
Me softly.
No regrets that I left. But I started learning what transition was about in 2023 when I left that government job. I did do an early retirement, so I'll benefit from that down the road.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize what I didn't know and what I needed to do. Big fail, honestly. You just have to be humble enough to realize that and then seek help.
one thing you mentioned, or right when you started, was not networking, and I've had that conversation quite a bit. What was your reason not to?
Honestly, when people talked about networking, and the reality is we network throughout the military,
Yeah.
throughout our career. There's just no way you can't get around networking.
Yeah.
But when I thought of networking and people were talking to me about networking, and not in a formal setting, I retired in 2009, and all these great programs just weren't around. So when I thought of networking, I thought, man, I'm asking people for something. It sort of felt sleazy, like it was a one-way interaction, and it was something I wasn't used to. I wasn't used to someone actively telling me just go network when I was already doing it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it was a strange thing, some foreign concept. And it wasn't until I started attending some of the programs that maybe in 2012, a lot of military programs just were starting out. So I started engaging with some of those programs and realizing, man, I'm looking at networking different. But it still wasn't really connecting with me.
Yeah.
So programs like Vector Accelerator, they forced me to do some self-discovery first. Because I think if you don't do that self-discovery, you're going to end up in another position where you're just not happy.
Yeah.
Because yes, money's great. And I think money will come, and it has. But if you're unhappy and making a killing, who cares? Every aspect of your life is affected by it.
Yes.
So I think first is that self-discovery. So if veterans can, or military that are about to transition can jump into a program like Vector Accelerator and do that self-discovery and figure out what is it that I want to do.
Yeah.
Because really the world is our oyster. It's there for the taking. But you got to figure out what that is first. And maybe you're making money right off the bat. That's great. And maybe you're having to grow into a role. But you know what I've noticed is that veterans, and I'm not saying it's only veterans, but the veterans I've seen, and only because I'm a veteran, we'll take on something right from the very, very beginning, and we'll figure it out. We'll just figure it out. And we'll run with it. And a lot of times we'll excel a lot faster than others because we've been in those positions where we don't have, it's short fuse. Something has to be done right away. Maybe it's because you're with a deployed unit, or, hey, we have funding for this short period of time. We got to hurry up, and this has to be ramped up quickly. And we're used to that.
Yeah.
So what I tell veterans now is, hey, take on those roles, even if it's not the level you think you're at. They'll recognize you. They'll see what you're doing if you put in the effort.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
What do you call that? What do you call that? Like,
I think that's a tough thing for me to define or call any one thing, but it's that resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience factors into it. When I was stationed with the Marine Corps, and even in other Navy units, there were times we had limited funding, and they expected the world. They expected to hand over something that was just the best of the best. And I laugh when I say best of the best because it brings me back to Men in Black. But they expect top notch.
Yeah.
But they give you minimal funding or resources, people, you name it. And you just have to figure it out, and you just do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you amaze yourself. Going back a little bit to I don't want to go too far into it, but that self-reflection piece, the first time I looked at my service record, pretty much all my evaluations over the span of my 23 years in the Navy, I had no idea how much I had accomplished, even in my early years. I'm reading evaluations, fitness reports, and realizing, oh my God, I was doing so much at 18, 19, and 20. And what I was doing was far above my civilian
Yeah.
peers
Yeah.
at that age. The
Right.
level of trust that they put on us early on,
Yeah.
it was just incredible. So I always tell people, do yourself a favor, go back and start from the beginning and read everything.
That's great.
Read your awards, what you've done.
Yeah.
Because I promise these veterans, I promise you will be amazed at what you've done. You may not think you've done a lot, but when you read over those things and look at it objectively, wow, we've accomplished so much in that period of time. So yeah.
I like that because I think sometimes people talk about transition feeling like a free fall because it's like maybe very disorienting. You're leaving the uniform, you're leaving a role, you're leaving people that know you and going to a place that they don't. And I can just imagine that exercise you're talking about provides at least some fixed points to kind of stand on. That's the foundation of who I am and what I've done. It doesn't mean that's what I'm going to continue to do, but I can imagine that being super valuable.
Yeah, that I really fell on that one by accident. I was writing my federal resume, which
sounds fun.
No, not fun at all. Sarcasm right there, Scott. I noticed it. It was probably 20 pages long. And I'm like, where do I start? And I'm thinking, well, let me dig out my service record. And I started writing everything down. That's when I said, man, I need to take a look at this. Let me take a step back.
Yeah.
And look at everything first objectively and write down the highlights or highlight stuff. So there I am on the computer sitting there highlighting things and realizing, oh my God, this guy's awesome. And it was me. So
who is this guy?
And it's not even a bragging thing. It's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I really didn't. So it forced me to take a deeper dive into it and realize, man, I've done so much.
Yeah.
That although I'm going to take this position, I really need to open up my eyes and realize that, man, I could do so much more. There's so much more out there because I've done so many jobs, not just around medical.
Yeah.
It's just crazy when you look at it like that. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I was going to ask, does that make it easier or harder to narrow down what you're doing? Because, a little bit of curse of options, perhaps. Like, as you said earlier, the world is your oyster. You've got capabilities wherever. What is that? How do you then take that next step where you start getting some clarity and tone on what you want?
Well, great question. I'm glad you asked it because I wouldn't have come around to it. But throughout my travels and programs that I've done, I've met some great people and a few people that have offered to mentor me and coach me.
Yeah.
And what I started doing is I took that same PDF file that I was highlighting and I said, all right. And I was told, hey, I wasn't told why I was doing it, but they said, go ahead and highlight everything you were great at. And I want you to just write everything down, spit it all out on one sheet of paper. Let's take a deep dive.
Yeah.
And then the next step was, and by then I realized what she was doing, but she said, okay, now what are the things you still want to continue doing? What are the things you never want to do again? Or if you have to do them, you don't want to have to do them a whole lot.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that people are great at, but they never want to do again.
Right.
So I think that helped me sort of guide me, because at first it was like spaghetti.
Right.
I'm great at all these things, man. How do I find those few threads that I really want to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was helpful for someone else to look in and say, hey, now tell me what you never want to do again. And I eliminated first.
That's great.
So once I eliminated, I said, okay, I know I'm good at those things, but man, if I could avoid them, I never want to do those things again.
Yeah.
So that was valuable. And then
just process of elimination.
Yes. Yeah. And it's easier to eliminate what you don't want to do first. And you'd be surprised. That power was huge.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, because it set the tone for a lot of other programs. It helped me out once I came into Vector Accelerator. I think it sped the process for me to enjoy it, the self-discovery and rebranding, and figure out, what does George want to do?
Yeah.
So I really think it helped out. So I think it's a disservice for people not to take a look at the things they never want to do again.
Yeah. And I think that what's interesting is to be able to say simultaneously, I can do that. I've done it and done it at a high level. But at the another part, it's like I actually can't. And I don't know what that is. If it's like your soul can't, your motivation just can't rev up, but it's like I can, but I can't. And to be able to cross that off, I don't know for you, does that take courage? Does that take just getting angry? How do you just cross it off? Because right next to that might be providing for my family, making my parents proud. Like there's other things in the mix.
Well, I don't even mean to be selfish at all. I had to not think about family at the time because you can always add back. Hey, I really need to just suck it up and do this because this will land me a job so I can take care of my family.
Yeah.
But at first I really said I need to just think just selfishly for a second. And you're not used to thinking selfishly in the military, and that's a difficult thing to do for veterans. But I had to sit there and selfishly say, I'm going to take these out regardless of how good I am.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it was interesting because I got flashbacks when I was crossing some of those out. And the flashbacks were, how did I feel when I was doing this? Man, I was unhappy.
Yeah.
I was stressed.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like you said, I was doing great at those. Yeah. But I remember having conversations a decade earlier with people. Hey, you're really great at it. There's another project coming up. We want you to do the same thing. I'd prefer not to.
Yeah.
I'll help someone out. I'll help coach them and mentor them through the process, but I would prefer not to be in charge of that. I don't enjoy it. If I absolutely have to, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But if I don't, and you'd be surprised how many of them were like, yeah, but you're so great at it. I can't believe you don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm great at it because I have to get it done.
Right.
We have a mission and I'm just trying to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
So,
I think part of the key there is, I mean, I think we understand that at a kind of a intuitive level. I've bumped into research the last few years from this thing called the self-determination theory, and they've done these studies about really like why do people do what they do, and there's always ingredients of why you do what you do, and what they've measured is when one of the reasons why you're doing something is for something else, like making someone else happy. You feel like you're supposed to. You don't feel like you have any other options. In other words, it's like it's not you in charge. You feel like you're responding to orders, really. That what happens over time to that person is their ability to persist goes down. They can't sustain it for that long. You might for a little bit. I think everybody can. Yeah. But the overall, and in addition, and you highlighted this, you also won't feel very satisfied about it. Even if you are operating at a high level and getting the accolades, and you're just like, yeah, I mean, thank you, but that doesn't mean anything to me, which is the comparison then is to find what you're talking about, find something that actually lights you up and is coming from really the source is kind of from the inside versus from the outside.
Oh, heck yeah. Because once I got done taking away all those things I never wanted to do again, once I started looking at the things I did want to do, man, it brought energy back.
Oh, yeah.
I felt good even writing them down and keeping those things in play, and realized, man, I was having good flashbacks of those times where, you're in a flow and you just lose track of time.
Yeah.
And there's times I'm like, man, I missed many lunches or got home late because I was so engrossed in something, but I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Yeah.
I got home later, but I still was energized and slept good. And so everything was working right.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. And I've had jobs where I've worked even parts of Saturday and Sunday just to set up for Monday.
Yeah.
But it never felt like a chore if I was enjoying what I was doing. So
what would you say? I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a total commercial for Vector, but you've been highlighting and talking about it. Who is Vector for? What kind of person? If you're talking to someone, you're like, you got to be ready for this, or you got to be kind of in this mindset. What would you say?
Honestly, I think it's good for everyone. I'm a more senior veteran, so and to that, and I've seen plenty of studies, and you hear the talk around more senior veterans. They're starting to realize over the last maybe 4 or 5 years that they have a tougher struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can find a job, but maybe they're not finding the job that's right for them or the career. But it's also good for those new veterans, because a lot of times when we're in the military, you're just going so fast, depending on what you're doing and what location you're at towards the end of your tour.
Yeah.
And you don't have time for self-reflection. I don't have time for that.
Right.
You have time for everything else, but that's just not what you have time for, because you're just going through the motion and getting a job done. There's a mission at hand. So you don't, heck, I don't even think I thought of self-reflection while I was in the military. And don't get me wrong, maybe part of it was because I was enjoying it. For the most part, there was very few jobs that I'm like, you know what, I never want to do this again. Doesn't matter how good I am. But I guess I never felt like I had to reach back and figure out, man, is this what I'm doing? Is what I'm doing right? Is this for me? So I never gave self-reflection a thought. I think when I started reading again, because I read for a long time in the military, then other times, man, I was just exhausted, don't have time to read. I love audiobooks. I think the beginning of COVID, I was showing someone the other day because they were asking me for books, and a few hundred books, I think, that I've been listening to on audiobook, and that's great, whether it's on a walk or on a drive. But that's when I started hearing self-reflection and all those other things that you don't think about. So I would urge veterans to read. Whether it be professional development, personal development, you name it, things around your field. I try to broaden it out a little bit, just to get a mix. But you hear similar stories in a different take. And you just have to find the ones that resonate with you.
What works for you the best for self-reflection? Some people seem to really process their thoughts by writing, some by talking, some by both, some through art, some by walking, movement. What helps you?
For me, movement's a big deal. I think it's something that I've grown to love, being physically active. And I realized long ago it wasn't just to feel physically better, but I realized, man, it's for my mental health. Just to clear. And sometimes I solve problems while I'm either walking or working out. But Vector Accelerator gave me an opportunity to talk to people every Wednesday. One, hear others, what they're going through. And oftentimes you sit there and oh, I didn't think of that. Let me write that down, because that might be helpful to me. And hopefully I was helping others as well, because I know I was definitely, one of the first ones talking about something. They heard my voice quite a bit on Vector Accelerator. So yeah, talking about it, I think is big. I think especially for my generation, we're used to keeping things to ourselves and figuring it out ourselves. Not asking for help. Once I started asking for help, once I started talking, I think it opened up my eyes to other things. Journaling. I started journaling last year, and at first I didn't take it on enough. Until it was kept on being brought up during Vector Accelerator. I said, let me try it again. And what I started realizing, journaling for me, whether it be early in the morning and I prefer it at night now, and I'll tell you why. At night, I get to jot down things that I'm thinking about or that are bothering me. You name it. It could be good, bad things. But it gives me a chance to look at them and say, hey, can I control this? And if I can't, it's a non-issue. Block it off. Let me get some sleep. Let me not think about it. And if it's something that I need to act on, okay, what am I going to act on? And make sure I'm specific about those goals. Like say if it's applying for jobs, hey, I'm going to look at these 3 companies. I'm going to try and connect with 5, 6, 7 people from that company. hopefully one of them gets to me, connects with me.
Right.
And out of all those, can I talk to at least one or two people?
Yeah.
So I was making sure they were specific goals. And I would also say, hey, I'm going to start this at 8 after my morning workout or walk, breakfast, take the dog out. So I was making sure I set up time for that, because I think it's really important to wake up, especially if you're transitioning and you don't have a job.
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep yourself on track and on schedule, because it could be easy just letting the day go by and get away from you and realize, man, I got nothing done today. So treat it like a job. And I want to go into a little bit more on that part, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go.
So I know at first, probably a good 6-7 months, man, I was just in it. 8, 10, 12 evening hours, probably longer than that.
Wow.
And it took a while, but all of a sudden I just was burnt out. And I know there's different schools of thought. I heard a lot of people say, you're doing the right thing, man. This is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think through Vector Accelerator and talking to some of these mentors that I met, all those coffee chats, I used to joke around about how caffeinated I was with all the coffee chats. And I realized, I need to give myself some grace. And I think we all need to give ourselves some grace if you're in that situation. And I said, just like I'm tackling what's on my journal and setting a certain time, I need to block out time. Hey, what am I going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? And Friday for me, unless I'm actively interviewing with a company or doing something I have to do, I block out most of my afternoon. It's mine. I'm not going to do anything work related. I'm just going to go relax, do whatever, just not work related.
Nice.
And even on the other days, I had to give myself that grace I talked about and say, on this day, I think my bandwidth is 3 hours, but I'm going to make those 3 hours count.
Yeah. That's great.
I'll tell you what, after I started doing that, so much more energy.
Really?
Because before that, Fridays, I was wiped out. Saturday, I was wiped out. I was just starting to recover on a Sunday before. Here comes Monday.
Back again.
Let's get back at it.
With nothing in the tank.
and it was that job that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So it's that one thing.
Yeah.
It could be difficult not to just dive in because you're thinking about family and all those other things come into play. But if you don't give yourself grace, I think the networking, the interviewing, all that stuff, I think you can mess those up.
Yeah.
Maybe not network in the right manner. Maybe the interview doesn't go well. You're not sleeping great. I mean, you name it. All those things affect your performance. So,
well, you mentioned the weekly Azimuth chats. I think it's been interesting. I mean, you've been like the mainstay for a while with Vector to show up to those, and we're expanding those. There's going to be one on Monday, one on Wednesday, one on Friday. We imagine a world, maybe not too far in the future, where there's one a day, a couple times a day. We want to have the place to come and check in and reflect on what you're thinking about, what you're processing, and you shared it beautifully. Sometimes that's for you to share out loud and process, and other times you get to kind of sit back and listen to someone else. And I often have so it is helpful to hear someone be like, oh yeah, I never thought about that before. But I think it's sometimes helpful to hear someone who's really struggling and be like, dude, I thought I was struggling. Maybe I'm not that far, maybe I'm not that bad off. But to have that place to kind of take a moment to think about how am I doing in all this? And is there a different way to approach this? The Vector program is self-guided. You can take a year on it. You can do it in 2 days. We really recommend about 30 to 40 days would be the proper pacing. But you can show up to these calls forever. George, you finished Vector a while ago and you're still showing up and processing stuff, which I think is awesome. I think that's, where else do you go to talk about this besides your journal or walking your dog or maybe your spouse who's probably sick of hearing you talk about it?
Yep. Probably.
So what's if we check in with you a year from now, what do you hope happens? What do you hope that is like the headline about your life a year from now?
You know, that I'm somewhere where I'm happy, regardless of money. That I'm happy with where I'm at. I know one of the things, I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you recently. Uh, between all the little freelance stuff that I've been doing, and I wish I would have done this a year ago. Quite honestly, I think maybe it was Ryan I spoke to about it, but I decided to take a part-time seasonal position with H&R Block.
Yeah.
And some of my friends were like, "Really, George? You could do more than that. You're better than that." And I'm thinking, and when I heard better than that, I'm like, "What do you mean better than that?" Just curious.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, that job's beneath you." I go, You have no idea, or you forgot, for the veterans. You forgot some of the absolutely crappy jobs we had growing up in the military.
Yeah.
I said, it is absolutely not demeaning. And really what it did for me, it did something that Vector Accelerator already does as well, but it put me in that professional setting, interacting with people in a professional manner.
Yeah.
And what it did for me, that Vector Accelerator does, it energized me. And, that reinvigoration, just to do something outside the box.
Yeah.
And I should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah.
I should have volunteered even more, because even volunteering, you're doing those things.
Yeah.
So it just puts you out there, and you're engaged. So you just feel better. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I don't care if you're working at Starbucks and you're a barista, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Find something. I'm fortunate this fell on my lap, because I said, "Hey, perfect timing. It's part-time. It's seasonal."
Yeah.
They're very flexible. They know that I'm applying and interviewing for positions, and they're completely open to it.
Yeah.
So I was open with them from the beginning. I didn't want to hold back and let I just wanted to let them know. But yeah, they have no idea what they're doing for me in that regard. Just to engage with people on a regular basis in a professional manner.
Hey, this is not a sponsored ad for H&R Block, but might as well be. So H&R Block folks, you're listening to us. We'll love to slap your name on this podcast. Well, George, that's awesome. Thanks for participating in Vector Accelerator. Every time you're showing up to an Asthma chat, I know it's going to be not just a good experience, and it's fun to spend time with you, but everyone's going to be enriched because your perspective is so helpful. And I won't make any age jokes. I won't. But your willingness to share openly means a lot, and it's a gift to others. So even as I start out this interview, it's kind of in some ways an insulting question. Tell us about a failure, but you didn't blink. You just like, yeah, this is something I haven't figured out yet, or it took me a while to figure this out. So thanks for that vulnerability, the authenticity, and I hope that you're blown away a year from now. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're running H&R Block in a year. And you're still, I don't know what you do, sweep numbers around for taxes, whatever you guys are doing there. Anyways, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of Vector. And we wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Love being part of Vector and helping out any way I can.
All right. See you.
All right.